The Kings end their 4-game road trip with a loss in Denver to finish this road trip 3-1, a very respectable 3-1. So close to going 4-0 on this road trip. A game where the Kings are entering the fourth quarter up 9, get outscored 32-17 in the fourth quarter. A game where the Nuggets shot over 2 times as many free throws as the Kings did. It was a really poorly officiated game. The officials just had no consistency throughout. Really, the only fact that you need to know to prove that this game was so poorly officiated was both teams were out of challenges by the end of the third quarter, every single one of them, all 4 being successful. But a game in Denver without Domantas Sabonis, without Malik Monk, and the Kings fought really hard. They came out with a big offensive explosion in the first quarter. It looked pretty good offensively all the way up until that fourth quarter. I mean, and really at the start of the fourth quarter and the second quarter, they had certain lineups that had some trouble scoring, as you would kind of expect with certain bench units. The absence of Monk and Sabonis was definitely felt in those moments. What I was really impressed with was the defense from this game, because that's the biggest question with this Kings team. We're going to see the offense come around, and we've seen times when the offense has looked really good, and then at times throughout this game, like I said, it went a little cold, but they're kind of figuring that out, and especially when you add Sabonis back in or Monk back in, those things will all figure themselves out. But it was the way that they came into this game with a defensive game plan, and the way they executed it really well was impressive. And so if Doug Christie and the coaching staff can get this type of defensive performance out of this team on a nightly basis, then all of a sudden, my hopes for this team go up quite a bit. And this was the game that I really was looking at as the litmus test to see if this Kings team was kind of legit in the run that they've been on recently. And I would say they passed, even though they lost this game, because of the way that they were able to defend against Nikola Jokic and have a game plan and execute that game plan. And, unfortunately, Westbrook goes 4 for 7 from 3, and Christian Brown goes 3 for 6 from 3. And, the game plan was to let those guys shoot. And even with them shooting well, the game plan was still working. And that's why the Kings had a lead. And they fought and they scrapped, especially like Keegan Murray, Jake LaRavia. Those guys were big time being asked to guard Jokic. And we really needed someone to step up from the bench in this game, because obviously you don't have Valanciunas on the bench anymore. You don't have Keon Ellis on the bench anymore. They have to step into starting roles, and they did that valiantly. But it's like, who else now who can you get to step up from the bench? And it was Jake LaRavia, and it was him on both ends. I mean, guarding Jokic, getting steals, intercepting passes, and then knocking down threes on the other end and finding ways to score. And the Kings' defensive game plan it was really good. Having Keegan start out on Jokic, having Valanciunas guard Westbrook, have DeMar DeRozan on Christian Brown. And I feel like it's kind of actually a good matchup for the Kings, because we are able to put DeMar DeRozan on someone who he doesn't have to close out hard on. We are able to put our center, whether that's Valanciunas or Sabonis, out onto Russell Westbrook, who they don't really have to guard at the 3-point line, and try to get those guys to shoot them out of the game. And the thing is with this strategy, yes, Westbrook and CB did hit threes, but it's not like they're out there just catching and shooting like Michael Porter Jr. Like, they're hesitating when they're out there. They don't want to shoot a high volume of threes. So even if they're open, even if they are knocking them down somewhat, I thought the defensive game plan was still working as intended, because there's just this thing about basketball where if you're not a sharpshooter, or even if you are, like if you're not Steph Curry or a star player, like you don't want to shoot the ball every time down the court. And so if you give Christian Brown a wide open 3 every time down, even if he's made a few, like he doesn't want to take the shot on every possession, even if the percentages would favor him. Offensively, the first quarter was amazing. I loved how Keegan came out aggressively and he was trying to attack the rim. And when he didn't score, Valanciunas was right there to clean up the rebound. You also had Valanciunas finding cutters. He found Keon twice cutting to the basket. He also found LaRavia at one point. And Keon also hit a really tough 3 at the end of the shot clock. So he started out with a quick 7 points LaVine hit a corner three. The Kings were just flowing early on, taking a 16-8 lead into the first timeout. And then out of that timeout, the Kings went zone. And they got called for a three in the key. Valanciunas did. But it really showed how they were trying to just junk things up defensively. Switch up coverages, make things as awkward as possible for the Nuggets. There were a couple of bad transition moments, like one where they left Michael Porter Jr. open for three and then had two guys closing out hard and running him off the line. But then the Nuggets just whipped it around a bit and it ended in, I forget, it was either a Jokic or a Christian Brown layup. And then there was another one where the Kings make a free throw and Jamal Murray ends up wide open in the corner. And I think that was just them getting a little confused, maybe not knowing if they were in zone still or in man. There was just a little confusion there. And that transition defense is super important against the Nuggets, but they cleaned it up from there. And the offense just continued to roll. Valanciunas with a nasty spin move on Jokic in the post, finishing an and one. LaRavia coming in, knocking down a couple of threes, and the Kings generating fast break opportunities. You had Keon feeding Lyles up ahead for a fast break dunk. And after Jake LaRavia went 2 for 2 from three, then he shot another one, missed it. Keon gambled for an offensive rebound that let Jokic get an easy layup on the other end. But what I loved about this play was then Keon hustled back, got the ball right out of the basket, pushed it forward because he knew Jokic wasn't going to get back quickly. Kings push it. They get another LaRavia three, and LaRavia didn't hesitate even though he just missed one. And that's one of those moments I was talking about where it's like, that's not a star player. He doesn't want to take a three every time down, but he was open and he did take it. I was worried he was going to pass it up because he just missed one. And so a lot of like role players, you see them kind of, once they miss one, then they're like, okay, now I need to move the ball and get it to someone else. But it's like, if you're wide open, especially in a transition moment, shoot the ball, and he did, and he made it. Because obviously if he misses that one, then it's like, oh, 2 misses in a row. LaRavia, what are you doing? You're a role player. You're not supposed to be doing that. But he was just confident stepping into that. And we've seen him taking more threes as of late. And so that's super encouraging. There was a moment where the Kings take Valanciunas out. They take Keegan out. So it's LaRavia and Lyles as the big guys for the Kings, right? LaRavia taking Valanciunas, Lyles being the guy to help down low and be the guy on the baseline when Jokic spins. And there's a big difference between Valanciunas being there and Lyles being there. And so it obviously makes the Kings a lot smaller. They don't really have any other way. There's no real plan B. That's just what we had to roll with. But I thought it worked pretty well. The only thing that really started to go poorly was Michael Porter Jr. He started attacking closeouts because the Kings were closing super hard on him. And then all the attention was on Jokic inside. So he got inside for a couple of layups. And of course, you don't want to allow those layups. You want to keep him in front of you. You want the help to be there. But at the end of the day, like, this is the game plan. You want Westbrook and Christian Brown shooting threes. You want Michael Porter Jr. driving inside instead of shooting threes. And if they punish you, they punish you. And so there's a little bit there where all three of those guys really were punishing us. And MPJ got a couple in a row and cut the lead to 2. But then there was a timeout and the Kings just went back to harassing Jokic inside and that being successful and generating turnovers and getting out in transition. Let Zeke Naji shoot from deep. And that's when Jake LaRavia just started going off and he stripped Jokic at one point, which he's shown to be really good at harassing guys and finding ways to get around them to get these steals. And he had 11 quick points right when he came in. Markelle Fultz got a block at the rim. LaVine got a finish on our final possession, and the Kings were up 42-29, just rolling. And it was very much a team offensive quarter. There wasn't a lot from DeMar. There wasn't a lot from LaVine. It was everyone contributing, with the lead guy being Jake LaRavia. Then when the Kings came out in the second, it slowed down. Kings had 3 bad offensive possessions in a row. They posted up Lyles and had him go to a post fadeaway. Then Fultz went one-on-one at a guy. Then DeMar turned it over. And the start of the second quarter, the start of the fourth quarter, those are the 2 times where the Kings struggle. That has been true all season long. So whether we've had this new group of guys or the past group of guys, it's been the same. And a lot of that has to do with not playing with a traditional center, I think, because all these guys are so used to coming around these screens from these centers and being able to play through a center. And so when you're having Lyles out there, it's just so different. And you have to have guys attacking one-on-one and getting by their man or attacking a closeout hard to create some shifts in the defense. And that really just wasn't happening. And so it really came down to one-on-one play. And DeMar DeRozan was really struggling. And I think he was like 2 for 12 at one point. And it took 3 minutes, about 3 minutes into that second quarter for the Kings to score. And it was Lyles missing a three and LaRavia tipping it in. And Lyles had an open three before that he missed. And right then, it's like when he misses that first open three, it's a really bad sign for that unit. Because if he's making his threes, then that unit's going to be good offensively. If he's not, they're not. That's just what we've seen really for the past 2 seasons. But the defense was getting it done. Keon got a steal that led to a Trey Lyles dunk. The Kings stopped the Nuggets from getting a field goal for about 4 minutes there. Because, the Kings had their guys out of the game, or a lot of them, but the Nuggets also had Jokic out of the game. So the Kings were locking down defensively. They were putting a lot of pressure on Jamal Murray, doubling him. And eventually, DeMar did hit a midi. He was really struggling. He was trying to get to the rim a lot, which every once in a while he'll get super aggressive going to the rim. This was one of those times, but it really just wasn't working out. He wasn't able to finish. He wasn't drawing fouls. He was turning the ball over. But then Valanciunas comes back into the game. And one of the things that the Nuggets started to do to disrupt the Kings' offense is they started to show and recover on these ball screens. And so that just really slowed the Kings' offense down. They weren't coming around the screens going down to the rim. They were getting stopped and they weren't capitalizing it. It happened a couple of possessions in a row. And so that led to some stagnant offense from the Kings, some transition for the Nuggets, although Keegan did get a massive chase down block. He had 2 in this game. But then Zach LaVine and Valanciunas kind of broke this defense by a pretty simple LaVine just finding a way to get the ball into Valanciunas as he rolled to the rim. And Valanciunas was really impressive in this game, doing a little bit of everything. He had a really nice steal, and then he was really good finding cutters, finding LaRavia on a cut for an easy bucket. That probably should have been an and one. Valanciunas had an and one himself. There was one play where Valanciunas just absolutely bodied Jokic in the post. And by bodied, I mean, Jokic just flopped. But it's still fun either way. The only real problem with what was happening for the Kings was the foul trouble. That LaRavia was picking up 3 fouls. Keegan got into foul trouble in this game. Keon was picking up fouls. But that's to be expected for Keegan and LaRavia having to battle with Jokic. I mean, there were some rough calls, like where they were just standing their ground, especially LaRavia just standing his ground and Jokic just running into him. There was one point where Jokic just grabbed him and pulled him back. And then, that's how he got wide open inside for a layup. There's definitely some interesting officiating going on around that. But there was a play where Keegan stopped Jokic one-on-one inside. But for the most part, they didn't need to stop Jokic one-on-one inside. And that was the beauty of it. Valanciunas was there most of the time for the double team. And that's why, they were holding Jokic in check. The Kings did need a little bit more from DeMar and LaVine because they weren't doing much to start this game. But DeMar did start to get it going towards the end of the second quarter. Started to hit some jumpers. Both teams had some challenges, be successful either way. You had Keegan hitting a step back long too late in the shot clock. And it really was a pretty even quarter. And the only thing that kind of put a sour taste into my mouth going into halftime was Valanciunas fouling Jamal Murray on a 3-point shot to end the quarter. And those 3 points that they got from that was what won them the quarter, 26-23. And then also Lyles turns the ball over with 0.6 seconds under our basket, which I could see it coming. Because we've done it before, and Lyles has been a very bad inbounder this season. I saw it coming. When he, put the ball into one hand like he was going to go long with it, I was like, oh, no. And so he inbounds, and, maybe Keon should have gotten it, but still, when there's 0.6 seconds or something like that, it's just better to go to halftime. Just inbound it to your own player right under your own basket. Heave it down the court, Like, don't try to get fancy because you're more likely to get picked off. And we saw this, Jamal Murray pick a guy off at half court and hit a three in the playoffs, however many years ago that was. So when you have 0.6 seconds, just let's go to halftime. But overall, a great half. The third quarter started pretty well. Really nice play drawn up to get a Valanciunas layup right off the jump and getting a stop on Jokic inside on the other end. And that's when DeMar started to heat up. Three after three after three. He went 4 for 6 from three. MPJ and Westbrook also hit a couple of threes, so they were kind of just going back and forth. But really, as long as we were keeping the Nuggets out of the paint, like that's what we were happy doing. Like if y'all want to just shoot some threes, like that's fine, because the only way we're going to get beat consistently is if they start getting into the paint a bunch. And unfortunately, that's then what started to happen because the Kings offense went cold. They started playing through Keegan, and Keegan was missing some shots. And the Nuggets got to the rim on 3 straight possessions, all on different players. There was a bad offensive rebound given up by DeMar. There was actually 2 of them that happened. And so with the Kings offense going cold, that allowed the Nuggets to get running the other way. Not necessarily fast break, but getting these cross matches, getting into the paint easier. The Kings weren't walling up in the paint like they had been doing in the first half as well. And so the switch the Kings made offensively was stop with these screens on the wing with Keegan coming around or with Keon coming around. We were just like having DeRozan and Levine sit in the corners. Like get the ball to Levine, get the ball to DeRozan, have them both operate on the same side of the court, have them screen for each other, get DeRozan into the post, have Levine on that wing so they can't help. And that worked really well because DeMar was on fire. He was just keeping the Nuggets out of reach because there was some wild transition play that happened. The pace got really weird. The officiating got really weird. Guys were blowing transition opportunities on both ends. It was just, it got really weird. But DeMar just kind of settled us down, hitting the shots to keep us ahead. Keegan did pick up his 4th foul and, Jokic started carving out some space inside a little bit, but DeMar just continued to hit shot after shot. We also had to use our challenge because Keon stripped Jokic cleanly. So both challenges were on Keon strips, I'm pretty sure. That's what's annoying. Keon is so good at stripping the ball from players. So good. But the referees aren't used to it. So they just assume when a guy reaches in, they foul. And so we have to waste these challenges because Keon's so good at getting these strips. But then LaRavia, he started playing really well. He intercepted a pass. I think it was a post-entry pass to Jokic. And then he pushes down the floor. And I saw there was no one with him, and when he started going to the rim, I was like, whoa. And then he drew a foul, and so I was like, okay, that was a little out of control, but okay. But then the Nuggets challenge, win the challenge, get the ball back. So LaRavia, it's very scary when he actually decides to drive to the rim. Much would have preferred him to pull that one out. But then on the other end, he's just battling with Jokic, battling, and he's just keeping position, and Jokic just tried to go straight through him. And LaRavia gets called for the foul. And so then on that same possession, then the same thing is happening. And then Westbrook tries to use it as a screen. And then it gets called an offensive foul. Like the refs were just, it was so bad. Like the exact same thing happening. And you call fouls going both ways. Like it made no sense. But all I can do is applaud the Kings for battling and maintaining physicality because, all they could do was continue to play with physicality and try not to foul and try to keep position. And they were up 9 going into the 4th quarter. But it was the start of the 4th quarter that really killed us. Jokic on the bench, and we're out there with Zach LaVine running the offense. You got Keegan, you got Lyles, you got a couple other guys. But the Kings got called for 2 blocking fouls. Keegan trying to take a charge, Lyles trying to take a charge. I thought the Lyles one for sure was a charge. Both of them called blocks. Westbrook just started getting to the rim. The Kings' paint defense really collapsed. And it was both in transition and in the half court because the offense was not good. The offense was all passing around the perimeter. No one could drive inside. We just didn't have, the personnel that wanted to get going downhill. And so LaVine had to do it himself. But up to that point, he wasn't having a good game. And so he was missing shots. But really, it was him trying to take tough jumpers. And then the Nuggets were just coming down on the other end and dribbling right by us, going right to the rim. And so by the time DeMar and Valanciunas were back in, The Kings were only up 2, and by the time Jokic came in, the game was tied. Valanciunas got to the free throw line in that quarter, and that was just the Kings' second and third free throws since the first quarter. But when you have it tied and Jokic is coming back in, it's always going to be really hard to win that game. And there were some plays, some, momentum swing plays that could have gone either way. DeMar really wanted fouls, like he was jumping up and down multiple times. And it really did just become all about the refs in the fourth quarter, unfortunately. DeMar drew a moving screen on Jokic, and Jokic couldn't believe it. Like, it was just both teams complaining to the officials. That was pretty much the whole game in the fourth quarter. And the Kings got down a bit, but they did fight back. LaVine hit a tough midi to go up 1. Keon had a great closeout, and that led to a transition opportunity where LaVine got to the line and put the Kings up 3. But then there were just a couple of plays that went against the Kings. They allowed an offensive rebound. Keon fouled Jamal Murray on a 3. That put the Nuggets up 2 with about 4 minutes to go. And then Keon fouled Jokic in the backcourt, which was a super soft call, obviously. And Jokic, he's truly flopping like a fish. He actually looks like a fish when he's out there. You're telling me this massive guy is being pushed around by tiny little Keon Ellis. But that was the 5th foul on Keon. He came out of the game, and we decided to close with LaRavia instead of Keon. And LaRavia, he made mistakes down the stretch. He helped off of Jamal Murray when he shouldn't have. LaVine got switched onto Jokic, LaRavia onto Murray. And for some reason, right when Jokic got the ball, LaRavia went and doubled. Like, that was not the game plan for the entire game. Not once did we do that all game. And he does it, in the final couple of minutes of this game and allows a wide open Jamal Murray 3. So, that was a bad play. But LaVine did answer back with a 3 of his own. Then Westbrook hit a 3 to go up 6. LaVine, another contested 3 to bring us back within 3. But the problem was the only time when we were hitting shots was after the Nuggets went up multiple possessions. When we were within 1 possession, we just couldn't get anything to go down. The offense didn't necessarily look super pretty late in the fourth. It was just a lot of isolation or taking tough shots. But that's kind of what you expect the offense to be. And you're without 2 of your key players that you usually play through in the clutch. And so it's not necessarily surprising that the Kings weren't able to pull this one out down the stretch against the Nuggets. There's that play where the Kings were down 6 and LaVine gets 2 guys running at him on the 3-point line, kicks to LaRavia. LaRavia could have shot it, could have kicked it back to LaVine, could have kicked it to Keegan. Instead, he pump fakes and then takes this super tough off-balance 3. So, LaRavia was great throughout this game. Wasn't great down the stretch. And so a tough one to lose, but also one that you can live with because it felt like it was a good effort. And because you went 3-1 on this road trip, because you were without a couple of your guys, and hopefully Malik will be back for the next one. It doesn't sound too bad. He was questionable coming into this game. Going through some of the stat lines, you had to get big minutes from some of your top guys. DeRozan played 43 minutes and took 32 shot attempts. He went 14 for 32. Started off this game not being able to hit anything. But the thing about DeRozan is he's been around for long enough where he's just going to keep going at it. He's not going to shy away from shots just because he's missing. And that at some point he's going to start hitting them. And he did. And he went 4 for 6 from 3 for 35 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds, only 4 free throws, which he was definitely upset about. LaVine played 41 minutes and had 20 points. Came alive down the stretch from 3. He didn't really need to do much in the first quarter. When he needed to be more aggressive offensively, he was, with the biggest moment being the start of the fourth quarter, but it didn't work out. He was taking tough shots. He wasn't making them. And he's just not a primary point guard. He can't be the guy that's going to be operating the offense out there because that's not his game. So he definitely missed Malik Monk, and Markelle Fultz wasn't very good in this one. Keon, coming into the starting lineup, played 39 minutes, 11 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals. He was all over the place, getting into the passing lanes, getting deflections, and sometimes it got him into trouble, getting a little overzealous. He had 5 personal fouls. He had 2 fouls taken away because of challenges. So he was really called for 7 fouls in this game. But I thought he had a good game, a good bounce back after he had a poor game against the Mavs. Valanciunas played 32 minutes, 8 for 14 from the field, 19, 13 rebounds, 6 assists, 2 steals. A very good game from him as well. Thought he was really good in his help defense around the rim, timed things really well. Got called for a couple of 3 in the keys, but I feel like you can live with that when he was contesting a lot of Jokic shots. He was also contesting Westbrook at the rim, so I thought he was solid. Keegan, 29 minutes, foul trouble. He had the 5 fouls. Started off aggressive, hit a nice step back 2 later in the second quarter. But then he went cold a little bit, and I think his defensive assignment also took away from some of what he could do offensively, especially in transition. He wasn't the guy that was getting out there in transition because he was down low battling with Jokic, and so that took away some of his offensive opportunity, but he was out there battling. LaRavia had 24 minutes, 6 for 10 from the field, 3 for 6 from 3, 15 points, 5 rebounds, a couple of steals. Really positive impacts on this game. We've seen what he's been able to do defensively and the effort and the offensive rebounding. And we still got to see that, and we still got to see him battling. And it's so nice to be able to have that wing where you have this certain game plan to be able to guard Jokic with Keegan Murray. And when he comes out, well, you have Jake LaRavia, and Keegan can only play 29 minutes here. And so you actually have the backup, and you can continue with the same game plan instead of having to switch it up because of foul trouble or because Keegan just needs a rest. But now we saw a more offensive side of his game. Lyles had 19 minutes, and I thought he was solid. I thought his rebounding was very good. He had 5 rebounds, and I thought he was just battling out there physically. And then the other guys on the bench, you had Fultz playing 10 minutes, and he didn't look great. Had a turnover, had one really nice block, but just didn't look very good offensively. And at one point, the Kings did turn to Doug McDermott for 5 minutes, and he did absolutely nothing. He got credited for a block. I don't remember that. I swear, every time Doug McDermott comes into the game, I just don't notice him. He's like a ghost. Like, unless it's garbage time and he's hitting threes. I feel like he rarely comes into a game and actually gets a 3-point shot attempt off. But the Kings now move on to the game against San Antonio. So De'Aaron Fox's return to Golden One Center. It's going to be an interesting one. It's going to be, a whole lot of emotions in that arena. Will Fox have like a 5-point game, or will he have like a 50-point game? I feel like, it's going to be like either he's like 15 points super inefficiently or he's going for 50. And I really have no idea which one it's going to be. But this should not be a game that the Kings are losing. Like they need to win this game with Wemby out. You've already lost to the Spurs a couple times this season. My main goal for this game, if I was the Kings, is just don't let Julian Champagnie get an open 3-point shot in the first 5 minutes of this game. He always kills us from 3. He is one of the certified Kings killers. Him, CJ McCollum, those are the 2 main ones right now. I hope Malik plays in this game because I just think Monk versus Fox be very entertaining. But the Kings need to be able to attack the paint with no Wemby inside. The Spurs just aren't strong at the center position, so they need to be able to attack, get it in there to Valanciunas, get into the driving lanes, and make sure you're not settling for threes. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Friday to recap that game against the Spurs. So I will see you guys then. Peace.